There is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle, than to initiate a new order of things. Niccolò Machiavelli. History does not reward silence. It rarely remembers those who were careful, thoughtful, or patient. It remembers those who were loud, those who spoke first, those who spoke with certainty, even and especially when they were wrong. There is a twisted irony in how power works. The ones who shout the loudest often lead the quietest minds. The boldest rise, not because they are wise, but because they are fearless in their foolishness. And we've seen it, again and again, in boardrooms where decisions are made by charisma, not competence, on stages where applause is earned through spectacle, not substance, in politics where the camera rewards confidence over character. You've seen it, a man with unshakable confidence, but no real competence, a woman with magnetic charisma, but no clarity. They rise, and behind them, the thinkers, the careful, the self-aware, those who consider all sides, those who speak last, if at all. Silenced, not because they had nothing to say, but because they refused to shout it. Machiavelli wasn't shocked by this dynamic. He understood it intimately. In fact, he built his philosophy around it, because in a world governed not by truth, but by perception, in a world where image outweighs essence, the one who appears strong, even if he is hollow, becomes powerful. And the one who waits, who pauses to reflect, who speaks with caution and humility, he is overtaken, not by greatness, but by audacity, by those too foolish to hesitate. This is the paradox we face, that the world often belongs not to the best, but to the boldest. Power doesn't flow to the most intelligent, it flows to the most certain. In today's world, truth whispers, but confidence shouts. The illusion of competence is more valuable than competence itself, and it's easy to fake. A sharp suit, a louder voice, an unwavering tone. People don't follow reason, they follow rhythm, they follow conviction, because it feels like safety. The bold speaker, the confident executive, the charismatic politician, they speak with such force, such certainty, that even you, even the wise, begin to doubt your own reason. Not because they're right, but because they never question themselves. That's the magic of false certainty. It reassures the uncertain. It calms the anxious. It sounds like leadership, even when it's just noise. And the people? They crave that sound. They want clarity, even if it's a lie. Because truth is messy. Truth is complicated. Truth is hard. But a lie told with enough charisma, with repetition, with the perfect smile and confident stride, that lie becomes belief. And belief, even when it's false, is contagious. Machiavelli knew this. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." In this game, appearance wins, over and over again, because truth moves slowly. It asks for attention. It demands thought. But lies? Lies come dressed in armor. Lies arrive with a crown and a campaign slogan. Lies don't wait for you to think. They just move. Fast. Loud. Certain. And in a society that rewards movement, that fears hesitation, the lie wins. It spreads. It seduces. It becomes the foundation of entire belief systems. And the truly wise? They watch from the edge, mourning what the crowd has chosen. Not knowledge, not nuance, but spectacle. Machiavelli didn't admire the foolish, but he understood them. More importantly, he understood why they win. In The Prince, he doesn't give us comfort. He gives us clarity. Cold, sharp, unfiltered clarity. He tells us that power is not about goodness. It's about the appearance of goodness. It doesn't matter if you are kind. It matters if they think you are. It doesn't matter if you are wise. It matters if they feel you are certain. And if you try to play the game of power using only virtue, you will lose. Not because you were wrong, but because the game was never designed for truth. Machiavelli wrote, "A man who wishes to act entirely up to his professions of virtue soon meets with what destroys him among so much that is evil." He wasn't being cynical. He was being honest. He knew the world would punish those who walk into a battlefield unarmed, waving a flag of integrity while the others carry weapons of manipulation. He saw power as a stage, a place where men wear masks, where roles are played, where the strong are not necessarily strong, but simply perform strength better. In this theater, fear is more effective than love, spectacle more effective than honesty, the cunning more effective than the kind. So what does Machiavelli suggest? He tells rulers, be like the lion, powerful, feared, but also like the fox, clever, deceptive, because strength alone is not enough, and honesty alone is suicide. But here's the real danger. What happens when someone pretends to be the lion? When they roar loud enough, puff their chest big enough, the crowd doesn't see through it. They don't ask questions. They don't investigate. They applaud. Because to the untrained eye, noise looks like power. Volume looks like conviction. And performance looks like leadership. That's the power of optics. That's the nightmare Machiavelli saw before we ever had cameras, microphones, or online followers. And that nightmare? We're living it. The wise rarely rise, not because they lack value, but because they lack volume. They speak carefully. They pause. They doubt. Not because they are weak, but because they understand the weight of words. They know a single sentence can mislead millions. A rushed action can destroy trust. A careless truth can become a weapon in the wrong hands. So they hesitate. They reflect. They revise. And while they do, the foolish act. And that action, that speed, becomes power. The modern world doesn't reward thoughtfulness. It doesn't reward nuance. It doesn't reward integrity. It rewards immediacy. It rewards certainty. It rewards simplicity. And that's the tragedy. Because some of the greatest minds in history, they never ruled. They never commanded armies. They never stood behind a podium. They wrote in silence. They mentored in corners of history. They were remembered, often too late. And while they waited, while they carried the unbearable weight of seeing clearly in a blind world, lesser men rose by shouting confidently about things they didn't fully understand. Because here's the truth. Complexity humbles the wise, but simplicity empowers the fool. The wise are paralyzed by context, by consequences, by long-term thinking. The fool? He acts now. He speaks now. He believes what he says, even if it's false. And belief, even false belief, is contagious. This is why the wise stay in the shadows, not because they are cowards, but because they refuse to wear a mask. They don't want to become performers. They don't want to trade their soul for applause. So they shrink back. They watch. And they mourn the cost of silence. But what if they didn't have to? What if the wise could learn to speak without surrendering who they are? What if the answer isn't to become the fool, but to understand him, to learn his tools, and use them with wisdom? Because in a world ruled by illusion, truth cannot afford to be soft. It must be shaped like a blade, sharpened, directed, delivered with force. Virtue alone is not enough. It must be paired with presence. The world listens to volume before it listens to virtue. It watches first, then thinks, and if what it sees does not grip its attention, it will never hear the message. This is what Machiavelli was trying to tell us. He wasn't inviting us to become liars. He was warning us not to walk into a crooked arena unarmed. He wrote, "If you bring virtue into a vicious game unarmed, the game will devour you." So what do? We learn to speak like the powerful, without lying. We learn to command like the confident, without arrogance. We learn to enter the arena without becoming the thing we fight. Because power doesn't always reward purity, but it can reward the prepared. You don't have to shout, but you must learn to speak when it matters. To speak with structure, with timing, with clarity that cuts through the fog. Don't trade your mind for attention. Don't dilute your truth to fit the trend. But learn how to wield presence. Learn how to stand still and be felt. Practice the power of silence, not as retreat, but as control. Practice the power of language, not to manipulate, but to pierce through confusion. Be the thinker who dares to speak. Be the leader who doesn't need the spotlight, but commands it anyway. Because in the end, Machiavelli never believed the world was fair, but he believed it could be understood. And once you understand it, you are no longer fooled by it. You are no longer silent in it. You are no longer powerless within it. You become something rare. A mind that cannot be manipulated, a voice that cannot be ignored, a presence that cannot be faked.